Welcome back. It's now 4 minutes after 8 p.m. And yes, it's time now for the Go Wild hashtag Tech Talk segment. We're talking about a African passport, which is expected to roll out in 2021. Um, what will this mean for South Africa? And obviously, the rollout of the AU, the African Union passport, is expected to take place in 2021 as part of the continent's African Continental Free Trade Agreement, also known as the AFCFTA, right? Now, in an analysis for residency, firm Henley and Partners, Justice Malala said that the initiative is crucial for the Africa Intercontinental Continental Free Trade Area, rather. And to talk to us a bit more about this, we are welcoming now at Tshwane University of Technology, lecturer Unathi Sonwabile Henama to the program and to the show to share with us his viewpoints on this. Lecturer Unathi, thank you for your time and good evening and welcome to Salam Media and Friday Night Live. Great to have you with us. Okay, lecturer, can you hear me loud and clear? The sound is just a bit of a problem there. If you can just maybe increase your volume. No, there's a lot of static on the line there. Okay, dear viewers, I do apologize for that. We're just going to take a short pause for a second while my studio operator Sadek gets you back on. Unathi, just stay on the line for us. Yeah, so anyway, having said that, we're talking about the AU passport. We'd like the viewers and listeners of Salam Media, if you've just tuned in, it's now 6 minutes after 8. I'm your host, Faraz Kulia. It is Salam Media. And we are talking about the Africa Free Trade Agreement and obviously about the AU passport, which is obviously going to bring about a whole lot of changes to, the continent and to the country as well. Now, having said that, despite being officially launched in 2016 or so, this initiative was obviously plunged by delays due to obviously the COVID pandemic, etc. One of the key aims we wish to talk about is to exempt bearers from having to obtain any visas for all 55 states in Africa. So basically, what this will mean is that they aim to exempt bearers to have any visa to go anywhere in Africa. So it's an Africa passport, right? So it's a continental passport, basically. We're trying to just get our guest, Tshwane University of Technology Professor Unathi Sonwabile Henama. And Unathi, are you back with us? Lovely. I can hear you loud and clear. Right. We do apologize for that. Thanks for taking the time to tune in and to join our program on Salam Media Friday Night Live. Lecturer, first things first, we'd like to talk about, the African Union in 2021. Obviously, now is expected to, as a part of the continent's African Continental Free Trade Area, to launch the African passport. What's this going to mean for South Africa? Yeah, to all 55 states. Yes. Now, obviously, free movement is great in terms of obviously, allowing us to travel to visit various countries for diplomats, etc., for business and everything like that, right? Um, in a sense of a commerce and business perspective. This will allow, a free trade throughout the continent. Travel restrictions, obviously. Okay. Before we get to travel restrictions, so far, only government leaders and diplomats and AU officials have been issued with the passport. Right now, we know that later in 2021, this is going to be issued. Travel restrictions, I would say, are mostly being lifted across the continent, and this combined with the first approval of the deployment of COVID-19 vaccine. Uh, well, for the implementation of the AFCFTA, right, in 2021. Now, the African Continental Free Trade Area, as I understand, aims to bring 1.3 billion people into a 3.4 trillion economic bloc. I mean, this is a staggering number, lecturer.
Yes, that's another thing that in order for countries to grow, they need to be power. They
Mm,
need to be especially for one that they sell to neighboring countries. And this is very, very important because as African states knows itself, then the world in Africa will be free. So that means that African resources have been paid for other countries when the several other countries, the two African countries,
mm.
never ever look for news that we have. So the problem is that the movement of people is attributable to our key that needs to stay. So someone will come and help us with African people to handle the different aspects that they see the reality of the Africa.
Now, lecturer, on that talking point, right? You talk about, free trade and movement of people. I want to highlight the talking point around South Africa and also the continent in terms of industrialization and infrastructure. We know that we are one of the most industrialized nations on the continent. Um, Surely other countries are going to have to, lift the bar and keep up in terms of infrastructure, be it rail networks, airports, seaports, etc. In terms of obviously the AU and the 3.4 trillion economic bloc and the potential that there is to bring that revenue to the continent, other countries that obviously within the AU who struggling with infrastructure or who have less of an industrial spectrum, right? How do you think they are going to manage to cope with this? Would we find that more countries within the AU are going to combine, similar to how we have the BRICS bloc, where South Africa is a part of, and to form like a African Union kind of a bank for a infrastructure kind of development? What do you think, in this opinion, is the initiative apart from the free trade continent agreement?
I think China would take a good development partner to many African countries.
Definitely.
Obviously, they produce a better way inside the infrastructure.
Mm,
But I think the controversial we're having is that this government that also has been done to necessity to put revenue to countries, you know? And this government means that it's electricity revenue to a country. It must be a good road network. And that road network took place. So I believe for us to achieve that goal, we have to make sure that we something with good revenue. So this shall help for those of you that are getting that you so you actually want to get on for the real. You think you can do it. So not only can you have principles and dedicated to the someone, the purpose is what to take the look at you, learn over the protection of the daily life. All of those things obviously which are not that minimized to do what it's about in that way. So Africa has to get its books together. But when you go to Ghana, whatever the next people have, so it comes with grammar, I mean, it becomes right. It comes with real life, it becomes right. So, I'm very focused on it.
mm. Definitely. Now, lecturer, I want to touch on the point. Look, we've mentioned trans-Africa travel. We've touched a bit on tourism, and I'm sure the tourism industries are going to boom. Uh, we obviously know the COVID-19 pandemic. 2020 was a year that's really staggered economies, and there's been travel restrictions, lockdowns, etc. Basically, a visa-free Africa, the Agenda 2063, as I understand, will allow, obviously, in the free movement of persons in Africa, a lot of benefits. Let's highlight some of these benefits. I mean, obviously, you mentioned boosting inter-Africa trade, commerce, tourism. What about labor and mobility? I mean, surely there's going to be a lot of job creation, inter-African knowledge and skill transfer. Why I highlight skill transfer? We take a lot of skills from international or neighboring countries like maybe Botswana, Angola, but also we take skill sets from the likes of India and maybe engineers from Russia or the USA. And I think there's a lot of talent which is not yet exposed on African continent. Let's talk about that, knowledge and skills transfer through Africa, so, or rather throughout Africa.
Yeah, but I believe implement that right of the right of the brand that the mathematics a lot of people say you can Africa
Mm,
about the coming from the Western countries.
yes,
But the opportunity to think of the houses are what happens from the current site was brought from Africa. Whereas number two, it was not also for every different from other African countries. But also actually I also asked about comes from the Tshwane, comes from the random. The black comes from a little bit of structure and appetite. The kind of work for it. But also is not in Sunday, for this because this right then it's not something that was a nature of something that comes like the comes from it. So the student movement is important for us to success, and important for us to serve as well. And also the two others also, sometimes we say that we're not competitive, we're not in a competition, but we're not competitive. We have something for that. We not really wanting to come up with a typical applicant about more money to go forward, to come up with a better when we have the issue like about amount of action to the principle to the way to come up with it. And that's what I was working.
sure.
And I'm actually a worker. And the goal, the plan is to think about something like that.
Right.
But it's something better than the plan that we want. And the thing that come out with it, it hasn't been a label. You gotta go. But remember, from African countries and Nigeria were African countries.
Yes. Now, lecturer, you mentioned obviously, Nigeria being one of our biggest trade partners, right? The free movement of persons in Africa, obviously, we do know will allow free trade, labor. We've already touched on commerce and skills transfer, right? What about securitization? We know there's lots of, I'd say, instability in certain African countries with no prejudice towards them, but it is a reality. We're not going to name and shame any of the countries, but whether it's West Africa, Central Africa, North, wherever the case is, there is, rather the UN peacekeeping missions going ahead. We've got our own SANDF soldiers posted there. How's this going to impact? I mean, there's a lot to consider here. And I mean, President Ramaphosa is chair of the AU. Surely will have a lot of pressure on him right now. How do you think securitization of the AU with its passport, what's going to be implemented, or what do you think could be implemented to secure security?
Well,
Mm,
maybe if we change the question of the perspective of
Lecturer, I do have to pause you there for a moment. Your line is just causing a bit of static. If you don't mind, just maybe moving around wherever you are, as the quality is a bit of a problem. Yes, right. Correct. You know, there was a famous song come 2010 World Cup that comes to mind by Shakira. It was "It's Time for Africa," and I think yes, it is time now for Africa. Lecturer, in terms of fostering border management. We do know people out of desperation, cross borders illegally, etc. Countries are going to have to put a lot of more resources to ensure securitization on that point. Now, in terms of promoting rule of law and Pan-African identity, how and public health. Obviously, we are living in the pandemic, 2020, 2021 right now. Fortunately, we are alive. We've lost many people throughout the country and Africa and around the world. May the Almighty, elevate their statuses in the year after. But having said that, from a public health perspective, what more you think can be done and should be done, and how is this going to impact this whole AU Agenda 2063 initiative? Yes. Yes.
people can say people are different, but I would have good say, rightfully, obviously, but not over the top of trend.
Now, lecturer, I want to ask a question, right? And also to our listeners out there, you can interact with us on our WhatsApp line on 0617660355. If you've just tuned in, it's Friday Night Live with me, ST Safaras Takulia. On the line with me is Tshwane University of Technology lecturer Unathi Sonwabile Henama. Lecturer, I want to talk about, in comparison to the EU, this AU passport, right? The European Union obviously might have had this initiative or not, but do you think we could maybe learn from some of their mistakes? Because why I ask the question, some of the African countries are pro, Russia, pro China. I don't want to get too political, but some of them also have got a lot of American interests and Western interests, in terms of oil, etc. And their foreign policies towards those nations. How's this going to all come together?
One,
It's a
one,
big question, right?
I think the negative that everything about that understand that there's something to set protection. What are those challenges? On one side, ministers in the understand that there have not ever had a such error. So they will go and watch the attack with the sure side that wants to sort of Europe back. Some of the African Africa that we have come to work with, we take it, right? We take it to the practice water. We take it
Hmm,
to the practice product. And
hmm.
increasingly are taking it to these other countries where there's no tax and no subsidy. Because of the demand.
Ultimately, growing their economies
Yeah,
and their
and
infrastructure.
we don't go around that because that's a promise to their country, you
Correct.
know. So the conversation of the government and management is very, very critical
Mhm.
for everything, you know. And the militarization and Africa is important to consider. We are able to achieve that success. The European Union and that have great assets, but I think it's much more
Yes. Uh, Lecturer, in conclusion, moving ahead with us, I mean, we've seen how Africa has grown over the last decade, over the last 2 decades. Let's say from the year 2000. I don't want to touch too much about, pre and post apartheid South Africa, etc. But we've seen the likes of Angola, Ghana, Nigeria, well, Libya, with the exception of obviously the civil war and the invasion of that country, and the Arab uprising, but we're not going to get too political. We've seen a lot of the African countries growing and infrastructure and the economy, right? This AU passport would obviously enshroud a continental identity, which I think African people might have forgotten. As if you look at it today, we as Africans, we sometimes emulate, non-Africans. Not that there's anything that's wrong with what you're wearing or the way you are in terms of culture, but in terms of mentality. Wouldn't you agree? Correct. Great stuff. Well, that's where we leave it as it brings us to 8:30. Lecturer Unathi Sonwabile Henama from TUT. Thank you so much for your time tonight on the program. You've really given us a lot of insightful information and it's been a great discussion. Looking forward to many more. Have yourself an awesome weekend and take care. Cheers. Bye bye. That was Tshwane University of Technology tourism lecturer Unathi Sonwabile Hanama, talking about the African Union Passport 2021, which is going to be launched, and how this is going to be rolled out and will impact significantly inter-trans travel, trans-Africa travel, commerce, tourism. We discuss security, health, etc. But anyway, having said that, it's 8:30 on the dot. Time for a quick ad break, and when we come back, we are going to be talking to Adam Ford in a few moments or so, a motoring journalist, in our Car Talk segment tonight. We discuss the list of the most anticipated new car releases for 2021. Stay tuned to Salam Media.